said, "I love you." And that's the last words that I ever spoke to her.
We didn't know what had happened. Kelsey was just gone.
The clock's ticking.
We were just praying she's still alive.
You see a flash of a figure come up from behind her. Kelsey's not necessarily all alone.
It's just like your heart just drops.
Just tell me where her phone is. Just where is it?
Pardon my French, it was really an oh shit moment.
May 25th, 2007. Overland Park, Kansas. 18-year-old Kelsey Smith is graduating from Shawnee Mission West High School.
I remember the day clearly when Kelsey graduated. We were very proud of her. My name is Missy Smith, and Kelsey Smith is my daughter. Her boyfriend John had an air horn, and when she walked across the stage, he had hit the air horn.
There was a lot of noise and clapping and stuff. The principal asked her, "Is that your hooligan family?" And she was laughing and said, "Yeah, that's them." I'm Greg Smith, and I'm Kelsey's dad. You know, I was happy that she graduated. I was happy that she hit that milestone. It was a neat night to see that.
Kelsey was born May 3rd, 1989. She was our third daughter. She was very inquisitive. She got the nickname No-No because she was always into things.
Kelsey was very, very outgoing, even at a young age. We had 5 kids. She was the middle child, so she went out of her way, I think, to be noticed.
I met Kelsey in middle school. She was very loud, and at first I thought she was kind of bossy, but like not in a bad way. I'm Megan Lang. I'm Kelsey's best friend. We were in marching band together. We both played clarinet. It was a lot of fun.
Every year, the marching band played at halftime at the football games. She took a lot of pride in that.
During her senior year, Kelsey's life changes when she meets her high school sweetheart, John.
When she first met him, she's like, "Hey, there's this guy, and he is so cute, and he's just awesome." And I was like, "Oh, cool."
John was over at our house all the time once they started dating. I mean, all the time.
They went to senior prom together.
We all got a limo. Kelsey had this big, beautiful yellow dress that looked just like the Disney princess Belle. And we had so much fun. After graduation, Kelsey and me were super excited to go to K-State.
I had always assumed that Kelsey would go to Kansas University because John was going to KU for college. And I told my wife, "Who do you want to bet moves first? Is it going to be Kelsey or John that changes schools?"
On June 2nd, a week after her high school graduation, Kelsey is excited and getting ready for a big date.
She and John were going to go out that night. It was their 6-month anniversary, which I had no idea was a thing, but apparently when you're 18, it's a big deal. Kelsey said that she had to go to Target to get a gift for John before they went out that night. And while she was there, she talked to her mother, Missy, on the cell phone.
It was about 7 o'clock in the evening. Kelsey had called me to ask me about the gift she was looking for John. There was this scrapbook box that she wanted to find for him because she had given him a card and his mom accidentally threw it away, not knowing that it was important to him, and it really upset him. So I was explaining to her which aisle she could find this box that she was looking for at Target. She was just in a hurry to get home because she was meeting John for dinner. And then I said to her, I said, "Bye, baby. I'll see you when I get home. I love you." And that's the last words that I ever spoke to her.
A short time later, a little after 7 p.m., Kelsey's boyfriend arrives at the Smith family's home.
John came over to the house to pick her up for the date. He was so excited, but Kelsey wasn't there. Started calling and texting.
But she's just not answering, and I just knew something was bad.
A veteran police officer, Kelsey's father doesn't waste any time trying to find her.
Kelsey's older sister, Lindsay, and John got in a car and went out looking for Kelsey. In the meantime, I started calling police departments and asking, hey, have you had any accidents or traffic stops with this car or whatever? And I remember Lindsay calling and saying, hey, Dad, we found her car. It wasn't at Target. It was at Oak Park Mall across the street. Kelsey wasn't there. It was just her car.
We knew something was wrong.
And then Lindsay said, John wants to get inside and look around. I said, I don't care if you have to tackle him. Don't let him touch the car. I'm calling the police.
Patrol officers respond to the call at 10 p.m.
I'm retired Detective Sergeant Bob Miller with the Overland Park, Kansas Police Department. Kelsey's car was located on the opposite side of the mall, a good third of a mile from Target. The mall was closed, and it wasn't even parked in a parking stall. It was just kind of parked in a dark spot.
After the police met us, they immediately treated the car like it was a crime scene.
Her purse was found in the car, her cell phone, and car keys were missing. The shopping bag from Target was in there, which just adds to the strangeness and the urgency of the whole thing. And then the police noticed something was hanging out of the trunk.
It was like a paper strap or something. It set off all kinds of alarm bells. My fear was she was in the trunk.
Watching them open the trunk of her car as a mom, it's just agony. I'm just sitting there holding on to Greg, and he wouldn't let me watch them open it.
But it was empty. She wasn't in there.
And then when she wasn't, you're just like, where the hell is my kid?
The car was towed to the Johnson County Sheriff's Office Crime Lab, where they started processing for fingerprints and for DNA. And then the police asked us to come down to the station to be interviewed.
I'm Detective Candace Bridges, and I work the Kelsey Smith case. When I first arrived at the station, Kelsey's family was there. Her boyfriend, John, was there as well. Everyone was on a heightened sense of alert. Kelsey was, by all accounts, a good kid. Her father, Greg, was a law enforcement officer himself, so he knew when to raise a red flag to let us know this was something serious.
They brought us into an interview room, sat us down in there, walked out, closed the door. I looked at Missy and I said, you know why we're here, right? I said, we're suspects.
The Smiths tell police that Kelsey left for Target around 6:30 p.m. and was supposed to meet John sometime after 7. But she never showed.
The timeline lets us know what she did before she went missing, which may sometimes hold the key as to why she was missing. And that became more important when we interviewed John a little bit later.
John told us Kelsey's very excited about going off to college.
But what John says next catches investigators by surprise.
John told us they were going to split up when they went to college. That's a highly emotional situation between John and Kelsey.
We asked, was she upset? Was she upset with him?
At that point, we were thinking John did something to her.
The race to find Kelsey.
First 24 hours pass and you become more anxious.
Clues buried in Kelsey's final moments.
We were dumbfounded.
I just lost it. I just fell apart.
And a suspect's chilling statement.
And he goes, yeah, I saw her. She had great legs. And just my skin started crawling at that point.
Kansas police are questioning the boyfriend of a missing teen, Kelsey Smith.
At that point, we were thinking she's upset at her boyfriend, John, or John did something to her.
We asked John, did he know anything that might tell us where she had gone? We went pretty hard at John with the questioning.
Because clock's ticking.
But John says he has no idea where she is or why she never showed up for their date that evening.
And then John showed us his phone. We were surprised. I mean, kids don't like to show their phones.
We learned that he was texting Kelsey's phone and trying to get her to answer.
We expected at least something from her saying, not now, or, something to turn him off or shut him down. But there was nothing.
To validate the story, investigators request John's cell phone records, which confirm that he was in fact waiting for Kelsey at her home at the time she went missing.
So that's pretty much what helped us clear John.
Authorities request Kelsey's cell phone records as well.
We wanted to know the last calls that Kelsey had made. Had she talked to somebody? Had somebody called her? So we set out to get her phone records, but we were told they were unavailable because they would require upper management to release them.
And as the wife of a police officer, I just found it unbelievable that I had so many obstacles. The phone was in my name. There was no reason for them to not do it. Just tell me where her phone is. Just where is it?
Next, detectives head to the site of Kelsey's last known location.
The Target store didn't open till, 10 or 11 o'clock on Sunday, the next morning.
So we called Target, and they opened the store for us and let us see the CCTV footage.
We're watching this video on the small computer screen. And we watched Kelsey. She parked and went inside.
So now we know that Kelsey did make it to Target. She was there and she was safe and going about her business, doing her shopping. We see Kelsey walk around the store, collect the items that she was purchasing.
She was on the phone with her mom. She talks to Missy for just a few more seconds, hangs up the phone.
She pays for her items, and we see Kelsey exit the store.
The video shows Kelsey walking out through the doors, and then the next view is the camera in the corner of the parking lot near where her car's parked.
The outside video shows Kelsey walking to her car, putting her items in the passenger side door, and getting in the driver's side door. Then she drives away.
And that's the last time you see the car.
Everything looked normal, just business as usual.
But investigators can't rule out something more sinister.
We couldn't say for sure that we had a missing person taken against their will, or if we just had a young lady who wasn't ready to be found yet.
Will this fleeting glimpse of Kelsey offer any clues to help find her?
We went on with the investigation because we had a girl to find. At the time, the family had already started searching the neighborhood.
We still have no idea where Kelsey is. And that was a really scary feeling. That first day, we all took out flyers and hung them around businesses, going door to door and searching.
Hundreds of volunteers will set out again today, passing out flyers looking for Kelsey.
I kind of just went on autopilot. I was also mostly running on energy drinks and no sleep, and it was a mess.
While the search for Kelsey continues, detectives are busy following up on their next lead.
The next morning, when the Macy's store opened, we obtained their video footage of the parking lot where Kelsey's car had been found late the previous evening. It is VHS tape, so it was pretty poor quality.
It's so grainy and it's dark, and the only light in the picture is the low watt lighting in the parking lot. And then a little bit after 9 p.m., you see the headlights of Kelsey's car coming in and then parks in the dark. Then you see the door open, a figure that you can't exactly make out gets out of the car and walks away.
We could tell that it wasn't Kelsey that got out of that car and walked off camera. You could just see the way they walked. It wasn't the gait of a teenage girl.
Investigators believe the figure is male.
So that was a surprise to us. We were dumbfounded.
After Kansas teenager Kelsey Smith goes shopping, she never returns home to her family. But the day after her disappearance, investigators observe something disturbing. Surveillance footage of an unidentified man parking Kelsey's car 2 hours after she went missing.
So we knew right away that kind of ingrains an acquired sense of suspicion.
Authorities then give added scrutiny to the footage that may contain Kelsey's final moments, in search of any sign of the male figure seen driving Kelsey's car.
My boss was a big tech guy, so we had a big command center with all these big Proxima projectors, and you could blow it up on a wall that was 15 by 12.
Rather than viewing it on a CCTV screen, which is a smaller screen, this time we watched it again with a different perspective. She goes to the store, she comes out the doors, and she's walking to her car. She puts her items in the passenger door and then walks around the back of her car.
We expected to see her get in the car, back out, and drive away, just like what we had seen on that small computer screen. Then, just a split second before she shut the door, you saw a flash. The second you saw that flash on the video, I felt that rush. The room got very hot.
At that moment, I believe all of us stopped breathing. You could have heard a pin drop. I remember turning to someone and saying, "Did you see what I saw?" As Kelsey's opening her driver's side door, you see a flash of a figure wearing a white shirt and dark-colored pants come up from behind her. It's very small. It's very hard to see. It's blurry. We believe the blurry figure was forcing Kelsey into her car. We then knew this was much more serious than we thought.
Pardon my French, it was really an oh shit moment. At that point, we realized we had an abduction.
But police still need to figure out who abducted her and why. By piecing together the collection of Kelsey's final moments, investigators hope to uncover what happened.
We went back to the inside Target video and watched it again to see if we could spot anybody wearing a white shirt and dark colored pants.
We literally watched everything frame by frame. I forget how many hours of footage Target gave us. Hundreds. It was overwhelming.
What we discovered is Kelsey's not all alone inside the store. She's being watched. When Kelsey enters the frame, shortly after you see this male enter the frame behind her, and this happens repeatedly. Every time Kelsey walks down an aisle, you see him walk down the aisle. He's watching her.
You've seen the National Geographic shows where the predator is circling. That's what you see. You see the suspect looking, and he walks past the aisle where Kelsey's at, and he locks. I mean, his head snaps, and he locks. Unfortunately, Kelsey's preoccupied. She's talking on the phone, and she's just not aware of what's going on. He sees Kelsey move towards the checkout lane.
As Kelsey's paying, he exits the store.
The camera angle's perfect as he's walking out the door.
You can tell he's in his 20s. He's got a goatee. At that point, we knew we wanted to identify this person.
I remember Greg and I going to the command center and them showing us the footage.
Once the video actually revealed that it was a kidnapping, it was just like your heart just drops.
The only thing that was really going through my mind was, he knows where my child is. I needed them to find him so I could find her. We were just praying that she's still alive.
An officer, racked by guilt, vows to make amends.
I was only 600 feet away when she was kidnapped.
And Andy thinks that he should have been able to stop it. He's hundreds of yards away.
Critical clues across state lines.
Captain Frederickson said, you need to brace yourself.
I was shocked, and I think all of us were kind of panicked at that point.
Leading to an explosive encounter with their prime suspect.
He was livid. And that's when he screamed in my face. He said, "This is all you got?"
After combing through surveillance footage, investigators identify a suspicious white male who is following Kelsey Smith and may have even kidnapped her.
Once we identified our suspect, we went to the media to help us find him.
Police are chasing hundreds of leads looking for this man, a person of interest, they say, seen on the same store camera leaving Target moments before Kelsey.
I was shocked, and I think all of us were kind of panicked at that point.
As Kelsey's story quickly becomes national news, one local in the community is working hard to help find her.
I'm Officer Andy Black of the Overland Park, Kansas Police Department. I was the liaison officer for Oak Park Mall, and on the day of this case, I was actually working there off duty. The evening Kelsey disappeared, I was doing the habit of smoking a cigar, taking a break outside the corner of the building, and that's when it happened. I was only 600 feet away when she was kidnapped.
And Andy thinks that he should have been able to stop it. And he's hundreds of yards away. Nobody anywhere expects him to see what's going on and be able to intervene. But to this day, I think he still blames himself.
It weighs heavy on me. I just wish we would have caught him.
Plagued by guilt and determined to find Kelsey, Officer Black volunteers to work the tip line.
As soon as the suspect comes on the TV and throws up the 800 number, We're overwhelmed with a huge amount of calls, but the majority of them weren't valid.
As calls continue to come in, one tip stands out.
We got multiple calls on an individual by the name of Edwin Hall. That name went into the log of all the other names that we had gathered from the TIPS hotline to track down and investigate. The first thing that we do whenever we got a name is we see if we can find a driver's license photo of that person so that we can indeed verify if they match the description of who we're looking for. And Edwin very much matched the description of the person from the Target video. So Edwin Hall was put to the top of the list. He was a local resident with a couple of different addresses on file. We ended up going to an old address that he no longer lived at, so we couldn't find him.
But law enforcement soon homes in on another suspect.
We got several calls calling in to say that that individual resembled someone they knew by the name of Jack. As you can imagine, just having the name Jack in a metro of over 1 million people, that's not necessarily going to be your best lead to track down.
Authorities have 2 potential suspects, but can't track either one of them down. Then, on June 6th, 3 days after Kelsey's kidnapping, investigators catch a break when another tip comes in to Officer Andy Black.
I got a call from a lady, and she said, I know that guy. She told me that he went by the name of Jack, and he lived in the city of Olathe.
Once authorities receive Jack's address, they immediately head to his home. When they arrive, they're surprised by what they find.
As they pulled up, they see this person packing boxes into the back of this vehicle, looking like they're getting ready to leave.
The man confirms that his name is indeed Jack and tells detectives that he was just getting ready to leave with his wife and 4-year-old son on a trip.
We didn't want to take the chance that he was going to skip town.
So at this point, the suspect actually willingly comes into the station.
With the clock ticking, authorities now only hope that they've caught the right suspect.
I got a phone call from my boss saying, hey, this guy, Jack, he's coming in for an interview. I need you back here now. So we were beelining back to the station.
4 days after the abduction of Kansas teenager Kelsey Smith, authorities track down a 26-year-old suspect named Jack. When questioned, he reveals something surprising.
As he's being interviewed by investigators, he admits that he goes by the name Jack. That is his nickname that he's given himself.
And then he gave his birth name, Edwin Hall. So that was a surprise to us.
Investigators realize that Edwin Hall is the same person that the tip line had received numerous calls about, and that detectives have been trying to track down.
It all started falling into place as to this was our person that we were looking for.
And then that's when they started with some very pointed questions.
Detective Miller shows Edwin a picture of Kelsey in order to gauge his reaction.
Edwin denied ever seeing Kelsey, but then we showed him the surveillance footage, and at that time he says he's the guy on the video.
While Edwin acknowledges going to the store, he insists he's never seen Kelsey.
So he offered up DNA, fingerprints, anything he could do to help eliminate himself, which was quite surprising. And the county took those fingerprint cards and his DNA swabs.
Despite Hall's willingness to provide evidence, Detective Miller persists.
We went back in, and I basically just put her picture on the table. It was the picture of Kelsey inside Target. And I mentioned to Edwin, I said, so you never saw her? Very attractive young lady, you know. I'd give her a second look, you know, so I kind of went locker room talk with him, and he bit. And he goes, oh, yeah, okay, I saw her. She had great legs. And just my skin started crawling at that point.
He claimed he noticed Kelsey, thought she was pretty, and watched her, but then also claimed he left and never saw her again, doesn't know what happened to her.
And I said, now you're saying you saw her. Why didn't you tell us that before?
But a smug Edwin refuses to answer. In order to charge him, Detective Miller needs more evidence.
I knew he was lying, but he was going to be let go.
In the meantime, investigators catch an unexpected break when a waitress calls the tip line, saying she recognized the man's picture on the news.
She called the police and said, that's the guy. That's the guy that was bothering me in the restaurant. The suspect, he went in there before he kidnapped Kelsey, and he was being real rude to the waitress that really upset her, and the manager asked him to leave the store.
Then the man leaves without paying his bill.
And he did like a dine and dash.
Upon hearing the news, Detective Miller immediately notifies his suspect.
I told Edwin, we're holding on to you. We're gonna book you for the theft. And so they took him downstairs where he was being booked. And Edwin was literally in custody and laughing at us. He said, this is all you got? This is ridiculous. I'll be out in 48 hours.
Meanwhile, across town, investigators are following up on a critical new lead.
As soon as Kelsey was reported missing, we immediately started requesting her cell phone records from the wireless carrier, but we were told they were unavailable. We continued to request the records, but it was 3 days before we got them. Once we did finally get her cell phone records, what we saw was the texts that John was sending to Kelsey's phone the evening she went missing. Those texts pinged off of the cell phone towers and proved to be a road map. We tracked Kelsey's cell phone pings down the highway in Kansas and into the Missouri side of the metro area. The final ping on her phone was in a wooded area known as Longview Lake. It's a public park where people go to, hike and walk their dogs. And so that's where we concentrated our search for her.
45 minutes into their search, they make a gruesome discovery when they find a female body that was hidden from view.
She was covered with branches. Her clothes had been taken off. She had a nylon belt around her neck. It appeared as if she'd been strangled with that belt.
Although they'll need a DNA test to be sure, the body fits Kelsey's physical description.
Then we realized that she's been the victim of a homicide. So now we go into full investigative mode of building our case.
Investigators have just discovered the body of a young woman, matching the description of missing teen Kelsey Smith. The Overland Park police then alert Kelsey's family.
We got a phone call that day on June 6th about 2 o'clock in the afternoon that said, hey, we need to come talk to you guys from the police. And I said, okay. So we met him out in the driveway as soon as they got to the house.
Captain Frederickson said, you need to brace yourself.
They told us that they'd recovered Kelsey and that she was dead.
And I just started screaming, not my Kels, not my Kels. But it was my Kels.
DNA testing later confirms the family's worst fears. The victim is Kelsey Smith.
Once we realized that she's been the victim of a homicide, we knew that we had a very viable suspect in Edwin Hall, who was being interviewed by investigators at the same time.
Shortly after getting the news that Kelsey's body has been discovered, the lab sends Detective Miller some pressing new evidence.
When Edwin was on his way out to the county jail for the theft, I had to run down to the car and stop him. They matched his thumbprint on the back of the driver's seatbelt buckle in Kelsey's car. I let Edwin know that he was now going to be charged with kidnapping and murder. And that's when he screamed in my face. He was livid.
The next few days were just a blur. We were heartbroken, but there was also kind of relief that we had actually found her.
After Edwin is arrested, the examination of Kelsey's body revealed that she had been sexually assaulted. They ruled the cause of death as being by strangulation. Edwin was charged with murder in the first degree. He was also charged with rape and sodomy. It wasn't until a year and a half later that we go to trial. Edwin decides to plead guilty to the charges in order to avoid the death penalty.
As part of the plea, Hall agrees to answer some lingering questions.
It was a long time coming for the family to learn what happened to Kelsey during her last moments that night. What he told us was that after he sees Kelsey, then from that moment on, he was hunting her.
We ended up finding out it was kind of a violent takeover. He rushes in with this pistol and shoves it in the back of her neck. And his words to her was, if you cooperate, I won't harm you. I just need you to drive.
A terrified Kelsey complies, not realizing her life would soon come to an end.
Edwin Hall was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole.
Justice had been served. I'm very grateful to everybody that worked the case because they all did a great job.
With the murder case behind him, Greg will forever cherish the time he spent with his daughter just hours before she disappeared.
June 2nd, 2007 started out as a fantastic day. I had all the kids and we went to a festival every year called Old Shawnee Days. So we spent the day there riding the rides. Kelsey had convinced us to get on the Ferris wheel. And her sister, Lindsay's like screaming and covering her face. Kelsey would turn around and look at me and just laugh. And so, you know, we had a great time. And so that was the last trip. That was the last time we were all together. before she was killed.
As for Megan, she'll always miss her best friend.
Getting married was really hard without Kelsey. And literally right before I walked down the aisle, Missy brought me this little charm thing to hang on my bouquet that had pictures of me and Kelsey on either side. And then I ugly cried really hard. She's like, no, like, don't do that. So she was definitely incorporated.
Missy will always be grateful for the moment she shared with Kelsey just before she disappeared.
And I was fortunate enough to talk to Kelsey. She was at Target. She's getting this gift for John. I said, I love you. And that's the last words that I ever spoke to her.
Disappeared on Saturday, December 16, 2000. When a person disappears without a trace, often the most critical information is hidden in their actions and words from the days before they vanished. Mike Williams' last known whereabouts may hold the clues to what happened to him. Mike Williams was a young businessman on the rise in Tallahassee, Florida.
He was really coming into his own. There was almost nothing that he couldn't do.
Early one morning, he ventures out to Lake Seminole to go duck hunting and never returns.
Such a tragedy that somebody like this has just vanished. Where is Mike?
Alarming stories start to surface.
Their evidence investigator told me your son fell out of his boat and bumped his head and drowned in alligators.
But as new evidence emerges, so do suspicions of foul play.
There are people who know what happened to Mike, or at least know a lot more about what happened that have never come forward.
If you ever like a mystery, you pick up this case and you read it. After the second page, you're hooked.
It is before dawn on December 16th, 2000, when Jerry Michael Williams, known to everyone as Mike, gears up for an early morning duck hunting trip, downs the last of his morning coffee, and heads out the door of his Tallahassee home.
He was always happiest outdoors. Michael was a hunter from the time he was 6 years old. He would be out with his little bow and arrow shooting at targets.
Mike's destination is Lake Seminole, Florida, a favorite spot where he has fished and hunted for 16 years. It's about 60 miles and a time zone away from Tallahassee. On his way, Mike stops off at work to pick up his shotgun. Though he is only 31, Mike Williams is already a successful commercial real estate appraiser in Tallahassee, and business is booming. His employer, Clay Ketchum, thinks highly of him.
He was really at a point in his career where he was really coming into his own. One thing Mike Williams loved was work. He really enjoyed it, really genuinely did, and he was a great worker for us. He had grown to where he was my primary real estate appraiser. There was almost nothing that he couldn't do.
Mike and his wife Denise are the parents of an 18-month-old girl. Everyone who knows Mike admires his devotion to Ansley, who is the apple of his eye.
He was thrilled to have the baby. That Ansley was the love of his life. In spite of his workload, Mike was always there for Ansley. Whatever Ansley needed, Mike was there. If he had to go home and cook supper for Ansley and then come back to work, he would do it.
Mike took on a lion's share of the responsibility in caring for his child.
He typically worked 12, 14, 16-hour days, got 3, 4, 5 hours sleep where he could, take the baby to the office with him. Working and taking care of the baby was his life from that day when they had her.
On this day, Mike leaves his wife and little girl at home for a solo hunting trip. Dawn has broken by the time Mike pulls up to a dirt landing on the lake. It is chilly in the early morning silence. There is no one else around on the shore or on the water as he launches his motorboat, stows his rifle, and starts the engine.
Mike really enjoyed hunting alone
According to his mother, this was a way of obtaining solitude.
The craft moves across the water and weaves around the many tree stumps that clutter this part of the lake, which was formed by a dam in the 1950s. But Mike knows its contours like the back of his hand. Perhaps he has some luck this morning and brings down his prey. Perhaps not. No one will ever know. December 16th, 2000 is the day Mike Williams disappears. When Mike doesn't return home by noon, his wife Denise is fretful. It is their 6th wedding anniversary, and they have plans to go on an overnight trip to celebrate.
Sometime around noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Denise became very concerned that Mike had not arrived home. She called her father, Warren Merrill, to let him know that Mike was not home yet. Mike had favorite places he would go when he would hunt and fish, so Warren basically knew where to go.
Denise's father, Warren Merrill, and a friend of Mike's drive out to Lake Seminole to look for him. They locate his truck and boat trailer at the remote landing in Jackson County.
No boat, no Mike, but there it was. He realized something was wrong. At that point, he contacted the Florida Wildlife Commission.
In Florida, the Florida Wildlife Commission, or FWC, is responsible for trying to find missing hunters. The first officer on the scene arrives about 4 p.m.
I started to call in other officers to come help us search.
Mike's mother, Cheryl, is out for a walk when the news comes to her eldest son, Nick, that Mike is missing.
When I got back home, Nick was crying. And he said, Mama, they can't find Mike. I said, what do you mean they can't find Mike? Mama, he didn't come home at noon, and Warren went over there, and they can't find Mike.
On Lake Seminole, a full-scale search continues on and off into the night, interrupted by a severe storm, which brings with it freezing temperatures. Early in the morning of December 17th, Mike's best friend Brian Winchester and his father find Mike's boat along the lake's western shore, just 75 yards from the landing. When it is light, FWC agent Dave Arnett goes out with Brian to look at the boat and do an inventory of the contents.
I found 2 life jackets laying under a bag of decoys in the front of the boat, and a shotgun still in a zippered case along the edge of the driver's seat.
The boat has a Go Devil type motor, useful in shallow, weedy lakes. He checks out the gas tank.
I took the top off of the gas tank, and when I did, I immediately saw that it was absolutely full of gas, that it had not ran very long. So my feeling was that he had fell out of the boat near the landing.
Responders search the area. The water is only 3 to 5 feet deep here and is choked with vegetation, but there is no sign of Mike.
If Michael had fallen out there, you would have found his body.
The location of the boat is also surprising, given the heavy western winds of the storm the night before. The boat should have been blown to the eastern shore, not washed up on the west bank. After the first day passes with no sign of Mike, it is assumed that Williams is the victim of a tragic accident.
I felt very sad. We really felt like that Mike had drowned and that he would be found probably within a week or so.
Over the coming weeks, officers spend 735 man-hours over an unprecedented 56 days scouring a 10-acre patch of Lake Seminole for Mike Williams.
Many law enforcement agencies were involved in this initial search. But the initial search was for a missing person. It was for somebody who may have had an accident on the lake. This particular lake, it's not that infrequent to have a drowning victim.
We expected, to recover the body quite soon. We just had problems understanding why we weren't able to locate the subject.
As time goes on, the search party questions why Mike's body doesn't float to the surface.
Historically speaking, most people that do go missing in Lake Seminole eventually will surface and a body will be found. I believe that There is some data that says that Jerry Michael Williams was the only body that was never found out of Lake Seminole.
There were theories floating around that maybe he wasn't here, but we continued with our search as if he was here because we had no other indication that he would not be here. His vessel was here. He was a duck hunter on this lake.
There was just no trace of Mike. It was like he disappeared into thin air.
Soon, a troubling theory develops. People start saying that Mike must have pitched overboard, and the chest-high waders he wore for duck hunting had sucked him 8 feet to the bottom. The alligators that infest the lake, some up to 10 feet long, must have gotten to him before the searchers could.
They're evidence investigators. And Miss Williams, I'm sorry to have to tell you, but your son fell out of his boat and bumped his head and drowned, and alligators ate him.
It is not an explanation Mike's mother can accept. Coming up, suspicions grow that the disappearance of Mike Williams is no accident.
So what are my other alternatives? If he didn't get eaten by alligators, did he walk off? Did somebody hurt him?
The intensive hunt at Lake Seminole, Florida for missing Tallahassee businessman Mike Williams continues through the Christmas holidays of 2000 into 2001.
When they were doing the search, they'd taken these big PVC poles and they were standing in boats and they were literally going down like every 6 inches, poking, trying to find a body, something.
By February, 2 months after he disappeared, there is still no sign of Mike Williams. But the theory that he may have been eaten by alligators gains traction.
This was no doubt the most exhaustive search in this lake. Since the lake has been in existence since 1957. So there had been theories that started as far as what may have happened to Mike. Why did he disappear? One of the earliest thoughts was that Mike may have been attacked and eaten by alligators.
There was this idea that was put forward that people believed. Mike Williams, the man eaten by alligators.
Mike's boss, Clay Ketchum, hears the theory that Mike might have been eaten by alligators from Mike's best friend, Brian Winchester.
And he said, I hate to even mention this to you, but there has been the thought process that an alligator has got him. And I just said, oh my gosh, and just felt sort of an uneasy, sick feeling in my stomach. That's the first time I had heard of the alligator eating theory.
Cheryl Williams, Mike's mother, refuses to believe such a terrible thing could have happened to her son. And Mike had always told her that alligators don't feed when it's cold.
I said, but that's not possible. Alligators don't eat in cold water. So then I called Florida State University and talked to their top alligator expert. And he said, no, your son could not have been eaten by alligators. Physiologically impossible. While it's a good theory, it won't hold up in your son's disappearance.
The evening Mike disappeared, a cold front moved through the area, and the weather for the next couple of weeks was freezing.
It got down to 19 degrees. It was very, very cold. They had like big 55-gallon drums that they would keep alit to warm the searchers. There's certainly no alligators moving in that kind of weather.
I've lived in Jackson County most of my adult life. In my experiences as a child playing in Lake Seminole, seeing alligators, I don't have any personal knowledge of anyone ever being attacked or eaten by an alligator in Jackson County.
Throughout the long vigil, friends and relatives all pitch in to help.
At the lake were Mike's closest buddies, I would guess. Mike's father-in-law, Mr. Merrill, was there. Brian Winchester was there, and his father, and I would kind of surmise that Mr. Winchester and his son Brian were sort of the lead dogs in this. Mike's very best friend was Brian Winchester. They often traveled together to hunt ducks in Louisiana, Texas. So they were just very, very close.
Mike's brother Nick is also a constant presence at the scene, poking the lake bottom, looking for any sign of Mike. As kids, they had been close, but in recent years have grown apart. Nick finds himself filled with regrets. At first, he believes Mike has drowned, but he becomes increasingly suspicious about what has happened to his little brother.
We pull up sticks and fishing reels, all kinds of debris, pieces of boats, just anything you can think of that might have fallen in a lake, but never found any trace of Mike or any of Mike's belongings.
Then, 10 days after Mike's disappearance, an FWC officer sees a hat floating in some weeds at the lake's edge.
Officer Perry and myself were searching, doing a grid pattern across the stumpy area, and we noticed the camouflage hat floating off to the east weed line of the search area. We collected the hat, which was a camouflage duck hunter's hat.
To the FWC officers, something seems odd about the find. The hat hadn't been there when they previously searched the area.
9 days prior to that, the hat was not there. There was nothing that we had found in an extensive search across the area. And on the 10th morning of the search, we found the hat floating there. The hat was like new. It had no slimy residue on it that things in Lake Seminole normally has. It appeared to have been recently bought or a new hat.
And Brian, Mike's friend, says, well, it looks like a hat that Michael had. But everybody at the search site knew that the hat had not been there for 2 weeks.
They tested it for DNA. It came back that Mike's head was not in this hat. They could not find any traces of DNA in there.
Mike's family can't help but wonder if the hat was placed there intentionally. They just don't know who would have done so or why. In February, Mike's wife Denise decides to hold a memorial service for her husband.
Denise's father came to me and Nick, and he said, Denise needs to get on with her life. We need to have a memorial service. And I said, but we don't know that Mike's dead. He's in the lake. I told you he's in the lake. And Nick said, but we don't know that he's dead. But if she wants to have it, okay.
The memorial takes place on February 11th, the day after the search officially ends.
I thought Denise was brokenhearted. Anytime I was around her, she wasn't talking very much. She seemed really sad. She wasn't having very much to do with the baby. She was sleeping a lot.
For the authorities, the Mike Williams case is closed. FWC's accident report ends simply with the notation that the duck hunter remains missing. According to Cheryl, about a week after the memorial, Mike's friend Brian Winchester meets with an attorney to ask about the requirements to have someone declared dead without a body or death certificate. And while Denise Williams seems to want to put the tragedy behind her, her mother-in-law is not able to let the matter rest without proof her son is dead.
So what are my other alternatives if he didn't drown in the lake and he didn't get eaten by alligators? Did he walk off? That was not something I wanted to think either, because he loved that child so much, and he loved Denise.
She tries to convince the authorities to investigate her son's disappearance as a criminal case. But she is unsuccessful. Still, she finds it hard to believe that Mike is dead and holds on to the hope he is alive somewhere. But if her beloved son is dead, Cheryl is certain that Mike didn't meet with an accidental death hunting on Lake Seminole. She believes his disappearance is due to foul play.
I couldn't think of anybody that would want to hurt my son. So what I did was I started listening. And I started writing down everything that everybody said. And all these different things just didn't add up.
Coming up, Mike's mother finally gets a criminal investigation going. But is it too little, too late?
Absent Mike's body, absent any trace of him, without any kind of physical evidence at all, it is incredibly difficult to crack this case.
Disappearance leaves a hole in his mother Cheryl's heart. Her husband Jerry has recently died after a short illness. Now she has also lost her youngest son. Mike had risen to affluence, making $250,000 a year as a real estate appraiser. but he had begun his life in modest circumstances. His father was a Greyhound bus driver, and his mother has always made ends meet by taking care of other people's children along with her own. Mike and his brother Nick grew up in a double-wide trailer surrounded by woods in the countryside. A deeply religious woman, Cheryl scrimped and saved to send her sons to a private Christian school in Tallahassee.
That's where he met a lot of people that I would say are from a higher socioeconomic background, lawyers and professional engineers, those types of things. I think that that was part of why Mike was driven so much to earn money, but also to be respected and earn the respect of his peers.
Mike was popular and on the football team. In the 9th grade, he met Denise Merrill, a new student. They fell in love.
She told me, she said, "Miss Williams, I saw Mike on the first day, and I knew he was it." I loved her. I thought she was wonderful for Mike. Her family was one of the best families in Tallahassee, and she was beautiful. I was proud of her.
At school, Mike also met Denise's childhood friend, Brian Winchester, and all three often hung around together. They were all friends until the day Mike Williams disappeared. Mike was president of the senior class, and Denise was voted best dressed. After they graduated from college, Mike and Denise got married. But after the wedding, Mike's mother and brother Nick say, they didn't see Denise very much.
When he got married, he didn't talk too much about the marriage, about what was going on in his life. Mom, Dad, and me didn't get invited over too much. They pretty much kept to themselves.
When Mike brought his daughter to visit, he usually came alone.
I always had the feeling that Denise just really didn't like any of us that much. Kind of looked down on us. Denise just went out of her way not to visit that much, even when Mike was there.
Still, Mike's family never thought there was anything wrong in the marriage. The official search for Mike Williams ends in February 2001. Then in June, 6 months after he disappeared, a new piece of evidence floats to the surface of Lake Seminole and raises questions. A fisherman on the lake finds a pair of waders drifting in a spot he has fished many times since Mike disappeared. He calls the Fish and Game Service to come and examine them.
The waders were not slimy. After 6 months, they should have been slimy. They were clean waders. They were like new.
They were completely pristine. There were no alligator teeth marks. Now, they had always told family and friends that when we find the waders, we will find Mike. Mike will be in them. Well, when that happened, people who heard about that, the mystery really intensified.
The waders are shown to Mike's friend, Brian Winchester. He can't make a positive identification, but says they look like waders Mike used.
Forensic checks were done on the waders, and there was no way to actually link these waders to Mike.
They determined that there was no genetic material inside the waders, and they actually gave the waders to the father-in-law. After they found the waders, the family or friend of the victim contacted a pretty renowned local diver.
The diver goes into the water where the waders were found, and minutes later he surfaces with a jacket and a flashlight. Both appear to be in pristine condition, not slimy as they should be if they had been sitting on the bottom of the lake for 6 months. In the pocket is a hunting license with Mike Williams' name on it.
You could read his driver's license number, his address, and you could even still see his signature. I mean, just as plain as if he had wrote it yesterday. And the light was a little cheap light, probably not waterproof, and probably not waterproof for 6 months. But they recovered it, clicked it on, and it was still operational.
Despite the suspicious condition of these new pieces of evidence, there is still no criminal investigation into Mike's disappearance, and no public scrutiny. Not long after the items are found, Cheryl Williams discovers that her daughter-in-law, Denise, has applied to a probate court in Florida to have Mike declared legally dead.
Florida law indicates that somebody must be missing for a period of 7 years before they're declared dead. However, that can be changed if there are circumstances which come up which may prove that somebody may have perished of an accident, homicide, or whatever, then that can be changed and brought up before the court.
Though Mike Williams has been missing for just 6 months, little more than a week after the waiter's jacket and license are found in Lake Seminole, his widow submits their discovery as evidence to the circuit court in Tallahassee. The judge grants a presumptive certificate of death. Shortly afterwards, Denise Williams collects the proceeds of Mike's life insurance, at least $1.5 million.
You were not told one thing about anything.
These items were used and mentioned in the probate hearing to get Mike declared dead, prominently saying, here these waiters were found, here this jacket was found. And a hearing that Cheryl Williams was never made aware of, that happened very quietly and very quickly.
Cheryl Williams is devastated by the news that Mike is declared dead. She is more convinced than ever that there is something shady going on. And she has new suspicions about why Denise was so eager to have a memorial service so soon after Mike disappeared.
One thing we did learn was that in order to declare somebody dead, you have to hold a public service saying that they're dead.
Her efforts to initiate an investigation don't sit well with Denise Williams. According to Cheryl and Nick Williams, Denise threatens her mother-in-law that if she persists, she will be sorry.
She and her daddy told us, if you do anything to get a criminal investigation, you're going to lose Ansley. I mean, it wasn't just a veiled threat. It was a statement. You'll lose Ansley. She said, I've got to go on with my life. I don't want to be bothered with anything else. I don't ever want to hear Mike's name again, and I don't want to know anything that has to do with him.
But the threat of losing contact with her granddaughter only intensifies Cheryl's search for the truth.
People have said, you had a granddaughter, you should have let it go because it can't do anything but hurt her. But I also had a son, and I didn't have anybody looking for him but me.
It takes 3.5 years, but finally in 2004, a family friend helps Cheryl get her suspicions before an investigator at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. An investigation is finally launched into the disappearance of Mike Williams. Several different law enforcement agencies look into the case, and in the end, they all agree.
Is it more than likely Mike did not disappear at the lake, that something happened to Mike maybe before he went to the lake?
The investigators face overwhelming challenges. At no time in the 56-day search for Mike Williams was his disappearance investigated as a possible crime.
Nothing was handled in the way that investigators normally would handle, let's say, a crime scene.
His home was never searched. Neither were his boat and trailer, which were driven off and left at Brian Winchester's father's home for months. The searchers trampled all over the places where his boat and truck were found, obliterating any possible evidence. The items taken from the lake were not preserved.
There's this laxness about it, which I think is born of not really a conspiracy in any way, of just people making assumptions that what they had was a boating accident, never even imagining for a second that they could have an actual crime, that there could be foul play involved. And I think from the outset, that has hindered this investigation, because without some sort of physical evidence, absent Mike's body, absent any trace of him, it is incredibly difficult to crack this case.
Coming up, a reporter shines new light on the case.
Almost every person that I talked to said they thought it was strange from the very beginning, and listed reasons why.
Get more Disappeared online at investigationdiscovery.com. After an official investigation begins into Mike Williams' disappearance, authorities are soon convinced that it is a suspicious missing persons case. Lake Seminole is in Jackson County, Florida, and Derek Wester, an investigator with the Jackson County Sheriff's Department, is pulled into the case in 2004.
If you were ever an investigator, then you know what I'm talking about, or if you've ever investigated a mystery, you pick up this case and you read it, after second page, you're hooked. You're like, oh, I can solve this, I can solve this.
Wester left law enforcement in 2010, but he worked on the Mike Williams case longer than any other investigator, and he still feels a responsibility to Mike's mother, Cheryl.
You feel that hurt and that loss that she's got. I think that Miss Williams deserves to know. I told her I'd do whatever I could.
He shares an opinion about the case with other law enforcement.
I think that he was the victim of foul play.
Wester believes the timing of the discovery of the waders and other evidence in Lake Seminole, so close to the hearing to determine Mike dead, is suspiciously convenient.
It was either God sent or man sent, would be my best. You know, either somebody put it there or God put it there, because it hadn't been there for the last 6 months.
When he begins his investigation in 2004, Wester learns the Florida Division of Insurance had conducted a quiet investigation of its own back in 2001. The agency thought it was curious that Mike's widow Denise had filed a claim on one of his life insurance policies just 20 days after he went missing, while the search for him was still going on.
Mike had 3 very large insurance policies, and before the actual search was ended in February of 2001, his spouse, Denise, went ahead and started to explore the possibilities of obtaining some insurance monies. At some point, the Florida Department of Insurance actually got involved and started to check on the timing of the insurance policies.
Mike's boss, Clay Ketchum, knew about one of the insurance policies because Mike had asked his advice about buying it just 6 months before he disappeared.
Should he get $1 million worth of coverage, or should he get a lesser amount? And I said, well, get all the life insurance you can.
Clay also knew that Mike had been having some trouble in his marriage.
Probably 30 days prior to his disappearance, he shared with me some issues that he was having at home. You know, for Mike, he was very vocal about it in terms of he wasn't happy with the way things were.
But Clay didn't tell the first insurance investigator who questioned him about the marital problems, feeling it would violate his friend's confidence. Though he had reason to wonder why Denise was so in need of money, since he was still paying her Mike's residual income.
Denise continued to receive checks, and so I felt like there was enough, you know, cash flow there to and I certainly disclosed to Denise how much money would be coming in, and it was probably a year and a half after Mike's disappearance before the checks finally stopped.
So there didn't seem to be a desperate need for the money.
In 2004, there is a new development. Denise is now openly dating Mike's best friend, Brian Winchester, who has gotten divorced from his wife.
It was probably just a few years after Mike disappeared that Denise came out and told us that she and Brian were dating.
That same year, the FDLE launches a criminal investigation together with Derek Wester from the Jackson County Sheriff's Office.
We had to have motive for a crime, and there's only 2 people that benefited from Mike Williams' death, and that was a pretty substantial amount of money. So, to me, there's always been 2 persons of interest.
During the course of the investigation, Wester interviews Brian Winchester.
And we got a call shortly thereafter that he had retained an attorney. He didn't want to speak with us anymore. And then the same attorney also advised us that the widow, Miss Williams, didn't want to be a part of it. They wanted to put it behind.
Shortly afterward, in 2005, Brian and Denise marry. They continue to live in the home Mike had bought in an upscale suburb of Tallahassee. Meanwhile, Cheryl continues to do everything she can to call attention to her son's suspicious disappearance. Jennifer Portman, a senior reporter for the Tallahassee Democrat, never even hears about the Mike Williams case until 2006, when she sees an ad in her paper placed by Cheryl. It immediately catches her attention.
That says, "Have you seen my son?" And it was a large ad. Like, this is interesting. I proceed to read. It says, "My name is Cheryl Ann Williams. My son has been missing since December 16th, 2000. They said first he was eaten by alligators. Now they think he was the victim of foul play." I mean, it was this very compelling, long thing. And I'm like, alligators, missing guy, investigation. The second I saw that, I'm like, this is a story that we need to follow up on. It was a compelling mystery.
She pokes her nose into the case, digging up court records, talking to almost everyone who was ever involved in investigating his disappearance. Though there was never much media coverage of the case, she learns that to many in Tallahassee, a small city and gossipy state capital, the case is something of a legend.
Almost every person that I talked to 6 years later said they thought it was strange from the very beginning and listed reasons why.
Her articles bring in new leads, and it is clear from her interviews with law enforcement that the focus on what happened to Mike has shifted. By 2006, investigators doubt Mike was ever at the lake that December day 6 years before. They think the entire scene appears set up to deceive law enforcement and members of his family about what really happened to him.
They're convinced now that he never made it to the lake and that he was murdered, most possibly just in his own house. And then the events were all staged to make it look like a hunting accident. That's leading law enforcement opinions.
And the mystery is, if Mike never left his house to go hunting, how did those items get out there?
Ain't two people. One drives that truck, one drives another truck. He pulls up, unhooks it, pushes it out. It wouldn't be hard at all to stage this.
There are people who know what happened to Mike, or at least know a lot more about what happened that night or that morning, that have never come forward.
Coming up, could new revelations lead to Mike Williams' killers?
They have new evidence that they're going over, and I hope that it's something that they can use to charge and convict somebody.
In early 2008, there is a new twist in the Mike Williams disappearance case. Authorities have already learned that the $1 million life insurance policy Mike bought 6 months before he disappeared was sold to him by Brian Winchester, now the husband of Denise Williams, Mike's widow. Now, the Florida State Division of Insurance Fraud announces it will take a fresh look at the case.
It's hard to overlook that his widow did marry the best friend who was instrumental in 2 of those insurance policies, and we don't overlook that.
While Denise had disclosed those policies in her petition to have Mike declared dead, she hadn't mentioned another.
We know that there was at least one more insurance policy, a pretty substantial amount of money that she failed to disclose. And we also had the proof that she knew that that policy existed between the disappearance of Mike and the petition. She wrote a check out to the insurance agents for the premium.
Wester thought the insurance investigators had a pretty good case. But then, late in 2008, the fraud investigation is closed, citing a lack of sufficient evidence that insurance fraud had occurred.
Yeah, I thought we was going to be able to make an arrest, but for some reason, nobody ever got arrested. I don't know why the warrant was never applied for or issued.
Over the years, Derek Wester has worked with an ever-changing cast of investigators on the Mike Williams case from a number of agencies. So many, he finds it puzzling.
It's odd. FDLE reassigned the case to, I don't know, 4 or 5 different agents that I know of. And then they get pulled off the case and somebody else gets reassigned.
Mike Devaney is the latest FDLE officer to tackle the Williams case. He says the agency has never dropped the ball on the investigation.
There has not been a year since 2000 where there hasn't been something investigatively going on with this case. We have a tremendous amount of information, and we are re-examining.
I really think that FDLE is on the right track now. They've got new angles, and I honestly believe that they're really working on it now.
Derek Wester stopped actively working on the case in 2008, but he says he keeps an eye and ear on it, even now.
They have some new information. They have new evidence that they're going over, and I hope that it's something that they can use to charge and convict somebody.
The FDLE says they have persons of interest, but won't officially identify them. Neither Denise nor Brian Winchester has been named as a suspect or charged with any crime. Nevertheless, some people are curious about Mike's widow and former best friend.
I don't know if they did it or not, and I just don't have any reason to suspect that they did. I just have this incomplete loop in my life where, and all of us do that love Mike, that we don't know what happened.
It seems that if anyone should be questioning what happened to Mike, you think it would be his wife and his best friend. I mean, the facts are there for them as they are for everyone else, and they won't really comment on this.
In an email, Brian Winchester declined our interview request to him and his wife Denise. In spite of everything, Cheryl Williams still holds out hope her son is alive.
I've always had two choices. Mike's dead or he's alive. Until they can bring me his body or proof of his body, I don't have to believe that he's dead. I can still hold out that hope that he's alive.
She knows she is the only one, but that is her duty as a mom. Until she knows for sure, she is not going to let him go. And I know that as every day passes and every year passes, it's a crushing burden.
And of course, there is another possible explanation for Mike's disappearance. He may have arranged it himself.
The pressure of work, the workaholic nature in him got the best of him, and he just said, I can't stand the pressure anymore.
Some people say that he's just down in Costa Rica or Mexico or somewhere sitting on a beach, drinking drinks with funny little umbrellas.
But those who know him best discount that theory.
My brother was not the kind of man who would just walked up, picked up and left.
Her soul. She was a very giving person and a very sharing person.
Who helped neighbors in need.
When they needed extra money for baby food or diapers, Janora was always there.
Is found brutally murdered.
This homicide was one of the most violent homicides that I've worked.
There was blood from basically the floor to the ceiling.
It was something that shocked the community.
Police uncover a sinister trail of deception and hate.
He had some strange tendencies. He seemed to be stalking her.
The polygraph came back with some clear signs that he was being deceptive.
To unveil a killer no one expected.
He made her believe that he was her knight in shining armor, so she never saw it coming.
He had two completely different faces on him. He was just the devil incarnate.
One hot summer morning in the sleepy rural town of Clinton, Louisiana, the sheriff's office gets a call that sends them to a farmhouse just outside of town. It belongs to a woman named Janora Gillery.
When Janora didn't show up for work on Monday morning, her coworkers started to get nervous. They called her cell phone, she didn't answer. They called her landline, and it was busy, stayed busy. At that point, a friend at work called the sheriff's office in East Feliciana and said, would you please go check on our coworker, Janora Gillery?
The deputy that worked for the East Feliciana Sheriff's Office, and he went to the residence to look for her. The door was unlocked. And he discovered the body.
He backed out of the house, and he said he threw up outside. He could barely even speak to the dispatcher. He was so upset by what he found.
Detectives are called to the scene.
You could tell something had happened at the very entrance of the door. There was blood right there on the door handle.
The blood on the floor leads detectives inside the house.
There, you could follow the blood trail, and it went into the kitchen. There were several knives that had blood on them inside of the drawer. There was also evidence like someone tried to use the phone, and there was blood on the side of the phone.
The blood leads to the bedroom, where detectives are met with a gruesome sight. In the middle of the floor lies the lifeless body of 42-year-old Janora Gillery.
You could see evident tears in her skin, which, we knew at the time were deep stab wounds. She was beaten severely. There was blood from basically the floor to the ceiling.
The lamp was broken and stuff knocked over in the bedroom.
I've seen other homicides that I've worked that this one was more brutal.
The body was also half closed, legs opened, and she was pinned against the wall. There was a possibility that she had been raped.
Detectives in this small parish don't investigate many homicides, let alone one this brutal. They call in the Louisiana State Police to help process the scene.
They took some DNA samples of the material that was found under her fingernails.
The samples are sent to the lab to see if there are any traces of the killer's DNA.
We didn't find any type of murder weapons. We found that it was actually no forced entry. We pretty well figured that it was somebody that she knew and had a little bit of trust in to open the door.
As police collect evidence, Janora's neighbors, Philip and Amy Skipper, arrive on the scene.
They was, of course, shocked. Philip's wife, Amy, she was really destroyed, and she was a friend of Miss Gillery's.
Police inform Janora's family. Her brother-in-law, Albert, is the first to get the terrible news.
I received a call from the sheriff's office indicating that Janora was dead, had been murdered, and obviously it was just an unbelievably bad moment. To Janora's sister, my spouse at that time, Yvonne, that was probably the single most devastating moment in her life.
The family rushes to the scene. When they arrive, detectives ask them for any details they can provide about Janora.
Janora grew up in Eunice, Louisiana, a small town in St. Landry Parish. From the time that Janora was a young girl in school, she was a very giving person. She was a very intelligent woman, filled with love for life, filled with love for animals.
Janora worked at an insurance company in Baton Rouge, but chose to live in rural Clinton, where she could indulge in her passion for animals.
She had 30 dogs, she had 3 or 4 horses. She had rescue animals. She took care of friends' animals if they couldn't. Animals were a big part of her life.
Friends were a big part of Janora's life too. She was thrilled when a sweet couple moved in across the street, and they immediately hit it off.
Philip and Amy Skipper moved into her neighborhood, and I felt very comfortable that she had developed this warm relationship with the Skippers.
Over the years, Janora and her neighbors became close friends.
Janora told me how reliable they were and how hardworking they were.
Janora really liked her neighbors, and she thought of the Skippers almost like family.
Now her friends are heartbroken over Janora's violent death, and police are faced with the puzzle of finding her killer.
It made no sense. Janora had no enemies, and she wasn't involved in anything shady or suspicious.
When the autopsy report comes back the next day, it concludes that the murder took place between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. It also reveals just how brutal Janora's final moments were. She was shot 5 times with a .22 caliber gun and stabbed 5 times. But neither of these attacks caused her death.
A severe blow to the back of the head severed her brainstem from her body. She was actually alive, and she was fighting back and was stabbed and shot.
This was one of the most violent homicides that I've worked. It was a very much overkill, which usually means it is a crime of passion.
This was a particularly brutal, dastardly deed. We all stood outside Janora's house that morning and talked about who could possibly have done this.
Despite the concern of Janora's family and friends, detectives can't rule out anyone as a suspect.
We began talking to the neighbors and co-workers, the ones that showed up, and just started trying to get information.
One person in particular draws investigators' attention, Janora's neighbor, Philip Skipper.
Philip was real calm. What really got me was his over wanting to help too much, you know. We just had a feeling Philip knew something.
Coming up, investigators uncover a dark obsession.
He was infatuated with her and couldn't take no for an answer.
And menacing secrets.
They called her names behind her back all the time, but never to her face.
There was an incentive for them to actually murder her.
That leads them to a suspect they never expected.
They went on a tour of the murder scene, and he described the whole thing.
He just blurted out, "You have a woman named Mrs. G that was..."
After 42-year-old Janora Gillery is found savagely killed in her home, detectives in Clinton, Louisiana suspect that her neighbor, Philip Skipper, might know something about the murder.
Philip was over helpful at the crime scene, and it is something that we wanted to check out more.
Police decide to bring in Philip Skipper and his wife, Amy, for an interview.
Janora really liked her neighbors, and the Skippers had a young child and their stepson, who was 15 years old at the time.
Philip Skipper tells investigators that when his young family first moved to Clinton, they were down on their luck, but their neighbor Janora kindly helped out.
She started to take them under her umbrella and make sure that they had food and made sure that they had electricity.
When the Skippers needed extra money for baby food or diapers, Janora was always there. The trailer they were living in, for example, was really dilapidated, so Janora helped them buy a new trailer. She helped them improve their lives as much as she could.
Janora's kindness didn't stop there.
She started to employ Philip to do all of the work in her yard and around the house, and employed Amy Skipper to do the work inside her house.
Janora treated the Skippers like family and trusted them with keys to her property.
She was just a very, very generous neighbor.
Detectives want to know if the Skippers ever argued with Janora. Amy Skipper said their relationship had recently been strained by an unfortunate incident.
Philip Skipper was raising pit bulls, and there was one dog that was not a pit that didn't get along with his other pit bulls, and Janora agreed to keep that in her kennel with her dogs. Well, that dog somehow got loose during the day while Janora was at work. The dog ran back to the Skipper's trailer and killed a goat they kept as a pet. Amy Skipper ran over to Janora's house, got on the phone, called Janora at work, and was upset with Janora. Now that's witnessed by a couple of Janora's co-workers who heard Janora's end of the conversation. She was crying by the end of this phone call. That's how upset Janora was. And Janora told Amy Skipper on the phone, "Leave the key at my house, get out of my house, and never come back."
When police question Philip about the conflict, he tells them that he and Amy had since patched things up with Janora, and they were back on friendly terms.
Philip Skipper was dismissive about the falling out. He said it was just a dispute among neighbors, and they worked it out, and there was no lingering after effects.
Police are skeptical about Philip's version of events, and when they notice scratches on his arms, they wonder if they were made by Janora while trying to fight for her life.
Questioned him about that. He said it was from him and his stepson wrestling in the yard.
Not convinced by his story, investigators asked Philip where he was on the night of the murder.
And he said he was asleep at the time that the murder happened.
To confirm Philip's story, police asked to interview his 15-year-old stepson, John Ballio.
When you interview the juveniles in Louisiana, you had to have permission of the guardian or the parent, which we had. I mean, they did cooperate there and let us talk to them.
When detectives questioned John, they noticed scratches on his arms too. Is it possible Janora fought back against two attackers?
John Ballio had marks on him. He gave us the same story.
John corroborates his stepdad's story. But police are still suspicious.
The marks on their arms was really something that we wanted to check out more if they was being truthful. So after that interview, we did decide to have a polygraph set up.
Philip and John agree to take the test, but before it can be scheduled, investigators uncover a critical detail.
During the course of the investigation, we did learn about an insurance policy Miss Gillery had taken out on herself, and the money would go to the skippers.
Was an insurance payout reason enough for the skippers to kill their friend and neighbor?
With a lack of motive, it's really hard to find the killer.
The insurance policy was an incentive for them to actually murder.
Police have just discovered that murder victim Janora Gillery's neighbors, the Skipper family, are the beneficiaries of Janora's $25,000 life insurance policy.
And it's just kind of unusual that the neighbor would have an insurance policy and list the other neighbor as a beneficiary. They're not related.
The insurance policy raises eyebrows for investigators, but Janora's family is well aware of the policy and does not suspect foul play.
Janora wanted to make sure that the skippers had the food that they needed, had the clothing that they needed for at least a period of time should she meet an untimely departure. The skippers, after Janora's death, did not know how to collect. They contacted me and asked me to assist them, and I did.
Still, police believe the insurance money is a possible motive. That, coupled with the scratches on Philip and John's arms, convinces detectives to take the next step.
Philip Skipper and John Ballio showed up at the Baton Rouge Police Department, which has a polygraphy unit, and they both took separate polygraph tests.
The polygraph interrogator asked 15-year-old John Ballio for an alibi.
John Ballio said he was at home asleep when the murders occurred.
Both John and Philip are asked about their knowledge of the murder by the examiner. And when their responses are analyzed, detectives are surprised by the results.
Both of their tests came back with no real signs of deception.
The results on the polygraphs, they was inconclusive, and the officer that was doing the polygraph didn't think that they had done the murder.
The results are a blow to the investigation, and lead detectives drop the skippers as suspects.
We still didn't have no physical evidence, and the polygraph made us think, well, we need to start looking elsewhere.
Detectives interview Janora's friends and coworkers about anyone she may have dated recently.
A friend of Miss Gillery's did give us the name of Tommy Alexandra.
Police track down Tommy at his home in a nearby town. He agrees to talk to police. Tommy tells investigators that he met Janora months prior at a feed store where she was stocking up on food for her animals. Janora agreed to meet Tommy for a drink, their first of several dates.
Tommy and Janora had dated on and off for some time.
But it soon became apparent to Janora that Tommy had other love interests.
It turned out Tommy Alexander was not just dating Janora at the time. He was dating a couple of different women.
Janora really liked him, but Tommy didn't want to settle down. He wasn't going to commit to one woman.
Is it possible that an argument between Janora and Tommy could have turned deadly?
We interviewed Tommy about the homicide.
On the night Janora was murdered, Tommy says that he was at home. Police talk to his girlfriend, who confirms his alibi.
They were able to eventually eliminate him as a suspect. As far as physical evidence to tie a specific suspect to the scene, there really wasn't anything. They kept trying to dig for facts, but they were hampered by the fact that, once again, they couldn't figure out why anyone wanted to kill her.
Determined to get justice for Janora, investigators interview her coworkers and discover that she had an ongoing conflict with a man in her life.
We learned about another friend, Steve Williams, from co-workers, and basically what we learned is that he wanted to date Miss Gillery.
But the feeling is not mutual.
Steve Williams managed to persuade Janora to go out one time, and that was enough for her. She didn't want to go out with him again, and she let him know. But he didn't take that no very well.
Miss Gillery had really got concerned about him, according to her friends. He would sit out in the parking lot and wait for her to get off from work, would show up unannounced.
Steve Williams showed up out of the blue while she was working her horses.
He pursued her a little more aggressively than was comfortable for the family.
From co-workers' explanations over there, he seemed to be stalking Janora.
Janora said, "He's bothering me and he needs to stop."
When detectives look into Steve Williams, they're shocked to learn that their potential suspect is one of their own.
Steve Williams was a Baton Rouge police officer.
Detectives have learned that Steve Williams, who had been repeatedly contacting Janora Gillery in the months before her murder, is a fellow police officer.
Steve Williams had recently gotten a job with the Baton Rouge Police Department, and he was a probationary police officer in the next jurisdiction over.
He was infatuated with her, and he was just a guy who couldn't take no for an answer.
Janora's friends knew that she was not interested, and of course after the murder, when the police are asking, well, who may have been upset with Janora, he became a focus of the investigation.
When you investigate law enforcement officers, it's harder than most because they know the law as good as you do. But we did have good cooperation through Baton Rouge City Police Department. Whatever we needed, they was willing to provide.
As investigators gather more information about Steve, they uncover an intriguing tip from one of his colleagues, 29-year-old officer Tabitha McCants.
Tabitha came forward during the investigation, and she had worked with Steve Williams at Baton Rouge Police Office.
It turns out she got kind of a bad vibe from him.
Tabitha tells investigators that she overheard Steve having heated phone conversations with a woman on several occasions while at the police shooting range.
She said they'd make multiple phone calls.
Police need to check Janora's phone records to find out if Janora was the person Steve had been calling. Tabitha also tells investigators that Steve mentioned shooting targets at his mother's home. And when they ask Tabitha if Steve mentioned the type of gun he used, her answer sets off alarm bells.
She says he used a .22, which by this time we found out that a .22 was used in the shooting of Miss Gillery.
As a police officer, of course, Steve Williams had firearms. The .22 caliber pistol, which is certainly not a police gun, but he did have a .22, and he shot it at his mother's house.
Based on the history of him stalking Miss Gillery and the access to a .22, that's when we decided that we would check Steve Williams out a little bit more.
When detectives check Janora's phone records, they quickly discover an alarming pattern.
Looking at the phone records, Steve Williams, in my opinion, was stalking Miss Gillery.
The phone records showed 35 calls to Janora's home from the shooting range in 4 months, and an escalating pattern of calls and messages.
Steve Williams had left several messages for Janora the weekend that she was killed. In fact, he told her in a message that he was stopped by her house on the day she was killed.
Investigators don't waste a second bringing Steve in for questioning, and when they do, his demeanor has them instantly suspicious.
Steve was real nervous. It was just something about him, like he was hiding something from us.
Steve insists he had nothing to do with Janora's murder and claims he stayed at his mother's house the night Janora was killed.
Steve's mama's residence, about 40 minutes away from where the homicide was.
Police believe Janora was murdered between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. Could Steve have slipped out undetected while his mother was sleeping?
Janora was shot with a .22 caliber pistol, and the fact that he had a .22, was nearby on the day she was killed, it really put him very high up on the suspect list.
That's when we had him take a polygraph.
Steve's answers are analyzed and the results sent to detectives.
Steve Williams' polygraph examination came back with some clear signs that he was possibly being deceptive.
His polygraph basically told us that he may have known something about the murder. Made me really think that he had something to do with this. That's when Steve advised he wasn't going to talk to us no more. He wanted a lawyer.
Despite Steve's refusal to cooperate, detectives continue to investigate him.
He looked like a good suspect. Now the question would be, can they find the evidence to prove it? They got a warrant for his house, they got warrants for his personal cars, and they got a warrant for his police car. Now, to do that, they had to work with the Baton Rouge Police Department. And the detectives were hoping to recover a .22, knife, anything with blood stains, anything to link him to the crime scene. They didn't find anything.
It's a major setback. But detectives still have one last piece of forensic evidence that they believe could connect Steve Williams to the murder. They get a search warrant for a DNA sample from Steve to see if it's a match for genetic material found on Janora's body.
We had those fingernail scrapings that were taken off her from the State Police Crime Lab.
It was determined, yes, there was some male DNA under her fingernails.
Coming up, investigators zero in on a vicious killer.
I picked out the worst photo that I could find of the crime scene, and I threw it in front of his face and made him look at it and said, did she deserve it?
Police hope to use DNA evidence to link Baton Rouge police officer Steve Williams to Janora Gillery's murder. Steve's DNA is compared to material found under Janora's fingernails.
His DNA was not actually determined to be under her fingernails.
The DNA also doesn't match any known criminals in the FBI database.
The fingernail scrapings came back to a known male genetic profile.
With no physical evidence linking Steve Williams to the crime, he's ruled out as a suspect, leaving investigators at a standstill.
The case had gone cold, and they had no other leads to check into it.
The case stays cold for an entire year.
There was great disappointment and great frustration on the part of the family when the case went cold.
The shock of Janora's murder may have faded, but the community lives in fear of a killer who's still at large.
When a murder occurs, it's very alarming. Everybody's on edge, especially after the case was at a standstill.
Then, on July 27th, 2001, a tip comes in that changes everything.
And I got a call on the telephone straight to the office. It was Detective Mark Apperson from Tangipahoa Sheriff's Office. And he just blurted out, he's like, "Do you have a woman named Mrs. G that was murdered over there?" And I just kind of looked over at Don and I said, "Yeah, we do have a woman named Miss G that was killed."
The detective there was working a domestic violence battery, and the victim had came in and told him that her boyfriend knew something about a murder in Clinton.
The woman tells detectives her boyfriend's name is Donnie Fisher.
We rode over there and found Donnie Fisher. We brought him over there to the Tangipahoa Sheriff's Office.
But Donnie Fisher is not in the mood to talk.
You could tell he knew something. That's when I picked out the worst photo that I could find of the crime scene. And I threw it in front of his face and made him look at it and said, "Did she deserve it?"
Reluctantly, Donnie looks down at the gruesome photos, and moments later, his whole demeanor changes.
He started to break down and cry. And he looked at it and then he told us, basically, his confession.
Donnie says he heard a detailed account of the murder from one of Janora's neighbors.
The neighbor took Donnie Fisher on a tour of the murder scene.
He said once they got there, he took them and said, "This is how it happened."
Investigators are stunned. They question all of Janora's neighbors at the outset of the investigation, but it didn't uncover any useful information or lead to an arrest. Detectives demand that Donnie reveal the neighbor's name.
He said it was John Ballio, Philip Skipper's stepson.
Detectives are shocked. They press Donnie for details. And he claims that John told him about the murder while cleaning up Janora Gillery's house.
Janora Gillery's family had hired John Ballio to go clean up the crime scene. Donnie Fisher, he was out there helping, so as they're cleaning up the house, John Ballio was bragging to Donnie Fisher about how he killed Janora Gillery. John Ballio took Donnie and said, "Here's what we did here, here's what we did here," and he described the whole thing.
Investigators don't know whether to believe Donnie's story, especially since John Ballio's polygraph was considered truthful. Yet every word of it lines up with the evidence.
John actually showed Donnie how Miss G ran through the house, and talking to Donnie, he described everything that we'd put together from what we seen at the crime scene.
Detectives want to know, why would Ballio want Janora dead after all she had done for his family?
Miss Gillery would rather help somebody than hurt somebody, you know. She would do anything she could to help the Skippers.
It's kind of heartbreaking.
Police now believe that Donnie is telling the truth, so they quickly file an arrest warrant.
We picked up John Ballio late on a Friday evening, and we brought him back to East Feliciana Sheriff's Office for charges of first-degree murder.
Investigators now believe the key to cracking this case is a confession from the alleged killer. Luckily, a recent change in Louisiana state law allows them to question a minor accused of murder without a lawyer or guardian present.
The police had to get John Ballio to come clean and tell the truth.
We brought him to my office and I advised him of his rights.
He bounced from here to there during his statements at first when we initially questioned him. And then we started talking about the brutality of this homicide.
After probably an hour and a half interviewing, he finally came and told the story about how he killed Miss G.
But first, Ballio needs to get something off his chest.
He didn't do it by himself.
Pointing the finger right back at Philip Skipper.
Detectives are speechless. John Ballio just implicated his stepdad, Philip, in the murder of Janora Gillery. And that's not all.
He pointed to several other people, too.
Detectives in Clinton, Louisiana have just arrested Philip Skipper's stepson, John Ballio, for the murder of 42-year-old Janora Gillery.
John started basically telling us how this went down.
And John claims he didn't act alone. He points the finger at his stepdad, Philip Skipper, and two other people.
Johnny Hoyt was a brother-in-law to Philip Skipper, and Lisa Skipper Hoyt was a sister to Philip Skipper. He said they killed this woman together.
Lisa and Johnny, that's the first time their name had ever came up. And we were, of course, shocked.
John Ballio gave a detailed confession on videotape to exactly what happened.
John claims that Philip, Johnny, and Lisa had formed a white supremacist gang called the Brotherhood, and that killing Janora was meant to be John's initiation into the group.
It would be my true test of brotherhood.
It was a skinhead gang. Actually, they were very anti-black and neo-Nazi.
Philip Skipper, he had two completely different faces on him. I mean, he had the one he presented to Janora Gillery, which was, you know, the nice neighbor. And then behind her back, he called her all kind of names. He hated black people.
He basically made her believe that he was her knight in shining armor. She never saw it coming.
Killing Janora would not only initiate Ballio into their gang, but also bring a financial windfall.
Philip Skipper was smart enough to figure out that, hey, if she doesn't like us anymore, it's not going to be very long before she changes that insurance policy and names someone else as beneficiary.
Ballio tells detectives that on the night of the murder, the group had been drinking heavily. They arrived at Janora's door at 2 a.m.
When we got there, Lisa walked up to the door and knocked on it and told Miss G that she needed some money to get the baby some diapers.
And Miss G cracked the door open. That's when Johnny hit her and forced his way in there.
They just jumped on her like a pack of hyenas.
She ran through the house, down the hall, screaming for him to leave her alone. And she ran into the kitchen and got to the knife drawer trying to get her knife so she could cut him to make him leave her alone.
Eventually, she ran to her bedroom.
John told us that they took turns stabbing her, and they took turns beating her, and they took turns shooting her.
And then Somebody threw the final blow that, according to the medical examiner, killed her instantly. It was a blow with a bat to the head.
Philip started hitting her with the bat. And after Miss G stopped breathing, they started raping her.
John Valio said that they used condoms. There was not an indication of any seminal fluid or any semen at the scene that night.
With no evidence to back up John Balio's claim of sexual assault, the rape charges are dropped. But detectives are still determined to bring Janora's killers to justice.
John Balio's confession gave us enough probable cause to make sure this case got prosecuted.
For cooperating with police, John is given a deal. He pleads guilty to second-degree murder and receives a juvenile life sentence to expire when he turns 21. Lisa Hoyt also takes a plea agreement and is sentenced to 25 years. That leaves Johnny Hoyt and Philip Skipper to face justice in separate trials. When news of the arrests gets out, Janora's family is devastated.
When the family found that Philip and John were involved, they were really, really upset and angry that the people that Janora had taken care of so diligently were the ones involved in her murder.
The prosecutors are determined to bring Janora's killers to justice, but they have a problem. There's no concrete evidence linking either Philip or Johnny to the crime scene.
There was some male DNA under her fingernails, but it did not match the samples that we had from the 3 males in this case.
Both cases rest entirely on the testimony of John Balio.
John Balio walked us through what happened that night, and that was crucial for our case. He actually brought everything together and made the whole situation make sense to a jury. With Philip Skipper's trial, the jury came back with a unanimous verdict. He was guilty of second-degree murder.
Philip Skipper is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Philip's wife, Amy, is not charged with any crime.
A lot of times people ask, what about Amy? What about Amy? Amy Skipper had no idea what her husband was doing.
I genuinely believe that Amy Skipper did not have any knowledge of what was going to take place. I believe that she had nothing to do with this.
Johnny Hoyt was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to 25 years without the possibility of parole. But for the family of Janora Gillery, no punishment could possibly make up for the pain they suffered in the wake of her murder.
Janora's father died of a broken heart. It was just a very, very difficult time for everyone in that